I would like to invite the first speaker of this session, Dr. H. Purushottam, Chairman and Managing Director, National Research Development Corporation, NRDC. Welcome him with a big round of applause. As I told in the previous session that we will not allow any speakers to make PowerPoint presentations, so it will be a panel discussion again. And Dr. H. Purushottam will be the moderator for this session. He will be the session chair. Rahul, Sir, key discussion points of this session, they are mentioned in the agenda. I will narrate. Why worldwide educational institutes are out of sync with employer needs. Exploring how technology can be used as a catalyst for change in the system. Technology as a tool to help develop core skills that will enable students to thrive in the future world of work. And harnessing the transformational power of technology in making learning relevant, engaging and steeped in the real world. I would like to invite Dr. Sarita Saini, President and CEO of the College of Fashion and Design, Dubai. Dr. R.C. Srivastava, Vice Chancellor, Rajendra Agriculture University. Welcome him with a big round of applause. Professor K. Bhairappa, Vice Chancellor, Mangalore University. Mr. K. Anand, Managing Trustee, Adi Sankara Group of Institution. Welcome him with a big round of applause. Dr. Satish C. Sharma, Chairman and Director General, Maharaja Group of Colleges, Udaipur. Big round of applause. Professor Dr. Gurdeep Singh, Vice Chancellor, Vinoba Bhave University. Professor A.K. Singh, Vice Chancellor, Rajmata Vijaya Raje Scindia Krishi Vishwavidyalaya. Big round of applause. Welcome, sir. Dr. Gurmeet Singh Dhaliwal, Chairman, Baba Farid Group of Institutions. I think remaining speakers will join the panel discussion in the middle. So, without wasting a single second, I request Dr. H. Purushottam to moderate the session. Over to you, sir. Thank you.
At the outset, I would like to thank the organizers for giving me this opportunity. And also, I welcome all the eminent speakers or panelists for today's afternoon function. As pointed out by the organizers, the key discussion points have already been enumerated here in the agenda, and they have also been read out for the convenience of the panelists. So what I suggest is, since we have about 5 speakers, including me, 5 panelists, so each one of us will share our experiences, our vision, or the thoughts on these 4 key discussion points which were raised or which was put before the panelists, so that we can share our thoughts in this subject, and we can also have an interactive session to evolve a consensus outcomes. That is what we could take from this conference for implementing, or as a lessons learned, or the best practices what we could learn from this conference. So I would like to now start with my introductory remarks as a chairman. Probably I can share my thoughts also on this these 4 points. Yeah, I got a direction that I should give a 5 minutes time to each speaker so that we can wind up the session in about 45-50 minutes. So coming to my observations or my thoughts or my key points to share with you. Of course, the education system in our country is transforming, and we are very much required to catch up with the rest of the world. If you look at our ranking with international agencies. I think it requires a huge improvement. We wanted to really, that is one of the ultimate measure of the quality of education is, of course, getting a place in the international rankings. So how do we improve those rankings? Obviously, one parameter is the skills what to impart to our students. The skills again, there are several sets of skills. As some speakers mentioned in the morning, there are life skills, there are domain knowledge skills. So both are important. Most of our institutions, traditional institutions, are giving that kind of a life skills or the value education system. But if you analyze the learning outcomes, we are very much behind the developed countries, and there is a need for imparting such kind of skills among the students so that the students are equipped with the skills required for the present needs of the society. We are in the knowledge economy. We know in the knowledge economy, the knowledge plays a very vital role. If you wanted to acquire knowledge in different spheres, what is important is nurturing creativity, innovation, and entrepreneurship. These are the three pillars apart from the value system we need to impart to the students. We need to revise our curriculum addressing these issues, then only we will be able to contribute and we will become one of the innovative nations and becoming a developed country in the years to come. So how do we do this? How do we nurture this creativity, innovation, entrepreneurship in the students? Apart from the curriculum, regular curriculum, there is a need to integrate these concepts, these subjects in our curriculum so that the students will be able to acquire these skills which are very much required. As some of the speakers said, industry is always ahead of the education system. That gap needs to be minimized so that our students, majority of them, get a good, well-paid jobs. As you all know, only around 20 to 25% of the students only they are able to get jobs what they wanted, or rather that is the readiness of the students to get jobs. So there is a huge gap. To fill those gaps, Government of India has also brought out number of schemes to improve these skills. For example, if you look at the Skill India, is a huge momentum Government of India has announced. And all of us now we should rise to make use of such kind of schemes which are being promulgated by government. Each university should think of having a skill center so that after the classes, the students can be trained in those skill centers to get them equipped with these skills required to compete in the global space. Another way is that now again another scheme of Government of India, because I represent Government of India, the Ministry of Science and Technology. Some of the schemes which are relevant for the educational system I would like to touch upon. Again, the Startup India. The Startup India, again, the students, the university systems, the research scholars can make use of it. A lot of avenues are being provided. Venture capital is being provided. A 10,000 crores venture fund has been created by Government of India. Whoever has got a brilliant idea, he wanted to become an entrepreneur, he wanted to set up a venture. Funds are available, mentoring systems are available, incubation centers are available. There are more than 300 incubation centers are available already in the country, and many more are being set up. Atal Innovation Mission has recently published. It is a great opportunity. I don't know how many universities have utilized this opportunity. They wanted to give around 10 crores grant, whoever wants to set up an incubation center. It's a wonderful opportunity, and they would like to encourage this. Probably there may be a second call also. If any one of you have not applied, probably you can think of setting up such an incubation center with the help of Government of India. And NRDC can help you in setting up such kind of incubation centers. NRDC helps the university system in several ways. Of course, many of the universities are not aware. Being NRDC, what it does is, whatever research is being carried out in the university system, we visit universities, evaluate those research outcomes. If there is intellectual property in those research outcomes, we help the universities to file the intellectual property rights, either it could be a patent, trademark, or designs. We also assist students if they have an idea, if they wanted to develop a prototype based on their research outcome, we also help them. And we also connect them to the incubation centers. You see, you wanted to become an entrepreneur, set up a venture, your idea needs to be further validated. So that is the system where the incubation centers are the places where you can conceptualize your idea, further develop it, prototype it, market test it, and develop a business plan. So all these facilities or the support systems, you can get it from the incubation centers. If you have your own incubation center, we can provide you all the services, starting from IPR, market analysis, or even prototype development, field testing, market research, even connecting to the buyers. We also participate in a number of exhibitions throughout the year, more than 20-25 Indian and international exhibitions we participate. Once we have an understanding with the concerned university and we identify some of the innovative projects, we can connect you to the buyers and the market. Like that, there are several ways NRDC is helping the university system. As I was mentioning in the morning, we were also setting up university innovation facilitation centers at 4 universities we already set up. Probably the next call would be coming shortly. If any university is interested and if they have the required environment, we can also encourage setting up of this university innovation facilitation centers. Apart from that, MSME has also come out with a big scheme to set up again intellectual property facilitation centers in universities. We have already facilitated setting up of such 2 centers. One is in MS Ramaiah College in Bangalore, one is at Andhra University, Visakhapatnam. So if any of the universities interested, we can partner with them and we can establish such kind of a center there. So I think it is only an introductory remarks. Probably NRDC is not known to many of the university systems. Of course, we have signed MOUs with more than 152 universities in the country, where we constantly interact with them and we evaluate their R&D outcomes. We help them in guiding, filing patents and transferring technologies. Around 10% of the technologies what we have licensed to industry have come from the university. NRDC has licensed so far around 5,000 technologies which were developed by public funded research labs and universities and NGOs, individual inventors. Around 10 or 12% technologies which we have licensed out of 5,000 have come from university system. So I would like to offer all the university colleagues here to interact with NRDC, and whatever skills required to be built in the students, we can be a part of the university system and can help you in building those skills among your students. I think with these introductory remarks, I would like to stop my discussion here and invite the next speaker, the next panelist, to share his thoughts and views on this topic, Mind the Skill Gap, aiming students with the skills they want tomorrow. Dr. R.C. Srivastava? Yeah, please.
Good afternoon, esteemed panelists and esteemed guests. Well, I deal with agriculture, and probably myself and Dr. Singh, we are the only 2 representing agriculture here. Now, before we talk what agriculture has to offer, when we talk of a skill, why anyone acquires a skill? Whether he upgrades his skills, acquires a new skill, what for? For getting a livelihood, if he is a starter, or to improve his livelihood opportunity if he is in the mid-career. Then what should be the type of the livelihood which one is thinking of? And when I was working in Andamans as a director of one of the ICR institute, this was a major problem because there the livelihood was always an issue. That's what sort of the livelihood on which we should work upon, so that it is in conformity with the environmental issues as well as their typical geographical problems. So I coined the term decent livelihood. And that decent livelihood, I said, is a level of livelihood compatible to capability and aspiration of the person. And then after I said, the next level, that what should be that conformity should conform. It depends upon the place to place. For a place from where the migration takes place a lot, from the area from where I come, that he doesn't have to leave his native place, either from one district to another district or one state to another state. Or in ways that, okay, he should be in conformity with his aspirations. Another point which I will like to bring in the livelihood, not only that aspiration and capability, but also its social acceptability. When these Ola cabs and the Uber cabs started running, a few things, fewer jokes, fewer even reality came out. That few boys who were working as the software engineers in Gurgaon, they left their job and opted for a Ola cab driver because they were earning more as a Ola cab driver than what they were earning as a software engineer, 25,000-30,000 per month, or if you say 3 to 4 lakhs per annum. But the fellow had no social acceptability. So when his family went for him for a marriage proposals, they told no, he is working as a software engineer because of his qualifications. Nobody mentioned that he is an Ola cab driver, because that has no social acceptability. So our livelihood options had to come up with these three what I feel, that these three parameters: capability, aspiration, and the social acceptability. In case of agriculture, it has become a real paradox. You ask to any farmer of any region of the country, and he will say, "Saab labor nahi milta." All technology you talk, if it is labor intensive, "Saab nahi ho payega, labor nahi milega." But at the same time, you go, it is unemployment. People are migrating in hordes from the rural areas. And even recently, our finance minister told that although agriculture contributes 16% of the GDP, it has got maximum underemployment. Now the challenge is that how to manage skills. Now we have got the jobs available, but for that no labor is available. The expectation is that we should have a better skilled jobs, but for that skills are not available, or that's why the jobs are not available. As we all know, agriculture is the largest private enterprise in the country. A single sector contributing 16% of the GDP, but that's also a harsh reality that 49.5% of people derive their livelihood from agriculture. And I always say 49.5% people contributing 16% of the GDP, growing anything between 0 to 4% depending upon the monsoon. And the rest, 50.5% people contributing, getting 84% of the GDP and growing anything between 7 to 10%. Now, what the disparity is going to be, so we have to tackle that. And for that, it has got huge employment potential. Only thing, what I feel, what I did earlier in my term, now I am trying to do, is that you convert technology. We have got huge number of the agriculture technology available, but mainly, अरे भाई फार्मर के पास बहुत ज़्यादा नहीं को छोटे स्केल में रखो, or do it like this, for which the skills are not available, people are not takers. So we have to convert them in micro business module. Even I have got the MBA in the agribusiness, and I have now started asking them convert all the technology in micro business module. That I did at my Port Blair stint, and this year again I am doing. They're huge. There can be still a skill for the input supply, a skill for mechanization. Now, when small and marginal farmers are constituting around 86% of the total number, the farmer on his own and individual farmer can't mechanize. So there is a huge scope for that. Local level processing. Most of the time, why the farmer is in dire strait? Because his output is being sold for peanuts, because he is not processed, not clay. That has got huge potential exist. For like Bihar conditions, Bihar, especially the North Bihar where I am located, has got the highest productivity of the pulse. But there is no pulse processing places. So one of the farmer told me, sir, अगर ज़्यादा हो जाएगा तो बिकेगा ही नहीं हमारा. Because there is no marketing mechanism. So we need skills so that we can process it locally. We need some infrastructure and we need skills for that, for which we are working. Then one of the ways is the cattle feed. Feed constitute around 60 to 70% of the total cost of milk or the even all animal products. But all feeds are manufactured. Now you see the process. This your basic material for the feed is manufactured by the farmers, produced by the farmer. It is transported to through the full chain to the processing industry somewhere else. From there it is processed and again through the market chain it reaches to farmer. So by the time it reaches to the farmer, the cost becomes almost 2.5 times or 3 times. Can we have developed technology for doing that and develop the skill for that? Now, milk. Milking has been a tradition with our farmers. But again, the new generation is not ready to invest his energy in that. Can we develop skills? Just simple things such as I am talking. Milking machines are available just for 1 to 1.5 lakhs. Can we develop skills and the required infrastructure so that that can create jobs? And job with dignity. Job not that भाई खेत में घुस के उसे धान के खेत में अपने कपड़े गंदे करने हैं. That is not the, for that people are not available. But the job which the people want to do, that sort of jobs are not available. So we have to convert our requirement in agriculture so that the youngsters can come for that. Skill those jobs. Similarly, I just came out with that as individual farmers where there is no consolidation, he is not ready to bore a well. Even while the whole area is floating on the water, he is not able to bore a well because he doesn't have that much financial muscle. He doesn't need because his plot size is just hardly 1.1 hectare that at that particular place. And I came out with an idea that why we can't, can we have such sort of the system which can again an entrepreneur. So we need in agriculture sector, which I am trying to do, develop skills for these small jobs, skills which can come up. I will not be talking when our colleagues were talking about $1 million and the $1 billion, but collectively that will become $1 billion. And most of all, our sovereignty depends upon our food security. We have to be food secure. I always say that in 65 we won the war, but still we lost on the table because we were not food secure. And in 71 or in 99, we could take our stand because our belly was full. We could withstand all the pressures of the India because we don't have to beg for the food. Thank you.
Sir, questions can be taken after the session because we are running a little late.
Yeah, 1 second.
Okay, please.
Connected to the milk suckling machine you told, skilled person will be used
Yeah.
for suckling of milk of memory gland. Can the memory glands will not affect the...
No. There's already machines are there already all over the world. Actually,
Yes, I know that.
Yeah.
See, it will affect the synthesis of milk in the cells, in the mammary glands. See, it's the suckling, the machine.
Yeah.
So the suckling portion that affects the hormonal balance in the animal. No, this is lactogenic hormone produces from the pituitary gland, it affects. So I see what I mean to say, the skill should be provided, if the natural phenomenon should not be affected. That is my intention, that's all.
Anyway, the reference between that is not applicable that much I can say.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Yeah. May I now request Mr. Anand to share his thoughts and views?
Greetings from Sri Shankara College and Adi Shankara group of institutions. To introduce ourselves in a minute's time. our institutions are named after Adi Shankara, one of the greatest philosophers the world have ever seen. And our institutions are situated in Kaladi, which is a very sacred place. In that, Adi Shankara was born in Kaladi. And our institutions are managed by Sringeri Mutt. As you all know, Adi Shankara established 4 mutts depicting 4 Vedas, and in south depicting Yajurveda. Sringeri Mutt was established, and our institutions are owned by Sringeri Mutt. Karnataka. It is in Karnataka. Now, as far as the institutions are concerned, we are committed to the nation and humanity by bestowing quality education well grounded on the principles of value-based education. Now, as far as the state of Kerala is concerned, we have a very effective additional skill acquisition program mission implemented by the government of Kerala, and that the head of the mission is the additional chief secretary, higher education department, and also principal secretary of the general education department. Now, as far as our institutions are concerned, we are doing additional skill acquisition programs as per the guidelines prescribed by the government of Kerala, and we find that the skill that is given in various areas, we give skill training program in apparel, electronics, media entertainment, food processing, telecom, beauty and wellness, healthcare, hospitality, rubber technology, etc. We find that to be very widely appreciated and accepted. Because what happens is when we give the skill training program, we give a certificate which is which is recognized by the government of Kerala, and therefore, based on the authenticity of the certificate which we give, 60% of the students who have completed training will get offers from various centers, and approximately 40% of them are employed. That's a very good result, I feel. And this being held completely under the supervision of the government, we worked well, we worked strenuously, and the result we got was, we are, for the past 3 years, we are rated as 5-star rating by the government of Kerala in the matter of providing skill training program. And also, we are the only one among the 2 institutions in the entire state to get 100% marks for the training programs that we have held. So, whatever we do, we got the result, and the main satisfaction which we get is that 60% of them are given placement which are accepted by the public, as my earlier speaker said. They are very well accepted, and the authenticity of the certificate is also high because 100% it is governed by the guidelines, it is controlled by the guidelines issued by the government of Kerala. Pardon? Mainly, see, we have different types of skills that we are providing. That is, one is a 21-day program, that is ASAP, that is Additional Skill Acquisition Program of the government of Kerala. Then apart from that, we also give training, a 6 months basic course in communicative English and information technology. That is along with the degree course that we are providing in our Arts and Science College. And in various fields also we give training programs. And in their respective fields, they get employment offers and acceptance among the public. And apart from these additional skill acquisition programs, our college, in addition to that, offers variety of add-on courses to the trainees like ethical hacking, photojournalism, skills related to tourism industry, etc., etc. Because as far as our place is concerned, it's a very rural area, and it's a pilgrimage spot and a tourism spot. It is just 5 kilometers away from the Cochin International Airport. And even for those who are working as guides, we give them training in the communicative English so that they can communicate easily with the tourist people who are coming to Kaladi. And the students are also provided with ample opportunity to interact with eminent personalities, because for every session, we invite great personalities from various fields so that the students will have opportunities to interact with them. Then additional modules related to leadership skills, personal values are also imparted. Special sessions on grooming, interview skills are also provided to the trainees. Group discussions related to environmental protection, women empowerment. All those are very valid subjects as far as the present days are concerned. Then street plays focusing on the importance of sustainable development are performed so that the public also become aware of the necessity to protect the environment. And this is the second one. The third one is the additional skill acquisition program. Sri Shankara College also provides extension programs for the public. The taxi drivers in the airport are provided with basic communication skills. And the guides who are in Kaladi are also given communicative skills. Then ASAP Sri Shankara College has also tie up with the neighboring government schools where the students are taught soft skills and communication skills free of cost. This speaks volumes of the social commitment and of the institution and particularly of the ASAP. When we do all these things, basically the best satisfaction we get is that the additional skill acquisition program of our institution is widely accepted. And our students who have completed the skill training program and who have the certificates, they get maximum opportunity than any other institution. This is the satisfaction we get as far as the management is concerned. And the additional skill acquisition program is headed by Professor C.P. Jayashankar, who is also present here, who is very effectively running the entire programs. Even the rating is given directly under the supervision of the government, even for small matters like even food, accommodation, and other skill programs, everything mark is given. And out of that, there are only 2 institutions in Kerala who have backed 100% marks. Greetings from our Adi Shankara group of institutions. I offer my best wishes, accept your blessings, and I request you to help us in giving us better suggestions so that this training program can be made unique, and also this can be shared by institutions in other states. Thank you very much.
I now request Professor A.K. Singh to share his thoughts and views on this topic.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, my panel colleagues, and the August gathering here. Before me, Dr. Srivastav, who comes from Agriculture University like me, gave you a little bit of a background. I would like to highlight a couple of things. Number one, agriculture is a state subject, and agriculture, higher education is also a state subject. This I just wanted to mention because for all of the traditional universities, it is the UGC or the SIT or something which looks after. For the agriculture universities, it is Indian Council of Agriculture Research, which is mandated to look at the agriculture research and education in the country. And keeping in view the requirement of this, we have about 73 state agriculture universities in the country, 3 central agriculture universities. We have 5 deemed universities and a lot of private colleges, and many private universities which are multi-faculty. Can I have the first one, please? The first one. Yeah. And then there are many private universities which have started agriculture as a subject. So we have essentially the agriculture education in India is based on the land grant system of US, where agriculture research, education and extension are taught simultaneously. So it is different from the other things. Then if you look at agriculture, who are the stakeholders? My colleague mentioned about farmers. There is a whole lot of agrochemical industries, could be fertilizers, could be pesticides. They are stakeholders. There are a lot of banks which are stakeholders. There are food processing units. And then, of course, the market, which Dr. Shah has talked about. So we have a whole plethora of stakeholders which are looking at agriculture. We unfortunately look at agriculture as a one subject, but agriculture is one subject which has a multitude of disciplines involved: horticulture, livestock, fisheries, to name a few of them. And a farmer is actually doing all those activities, maybe one particular one in the. And one point I would like to highlight here is, all of you, or maybe most of you must have heard about Green Revolution. There were many countries in the world at that time which were in the same status as of India, but India could implement and show Green Revolution to the world. Other countries could not. And the reason was that we had staff, faculty, which was trained to take the technology that we imported to the farmers' fields. And that's how it became successful. Next one. Yeah. Now, I mentioned about Indian Council of Agriculture. To look at the needs of what are required, they have a Dean's Committee formulated almost every decade, and they examine from all possible angles. They have an integrated approach, and we all know that if agriculture has to prosper, it has to be technology driven. And the first point in the discussion point was brought out very clearly by in most of the discussions earlier, that there is a gap between the traditional education and what the industry needs. What probably are not so popular in agriculture here are the agri-polytechniques, which probably are needed so that we can have even a profession like a gardener, a trained Mali. There are very few institutions which give this seed production, nursery, honeybee. All these things are vocational trainings which are not yet being popularized as such. Then these, I was telling about the Dean's Committee, they look at what is required, and now they have just submitted a report which is to be implemented from this academic session. May I have the previous one, please? The previous slide.
So that is on autoplay mode.
No, the previous one. I don't know, it's all right. I just need one. Yeah, this one. As a part of that, to train the people, the undergraduate people, just please hold on to this one. This will be the last slide anyway. So they have come up with a program called Student Ready. That is Rural and Entrepreneurship Awareness Development Yojana for the students. And this was launched by our Honorable Prime Minister in 2015. And now this has got very clearly 5 components. The first component deals with the experiential learning, which is actually hands-on training. And that's for 24 weeks. Then we have skill development training, depending upon what the particular student is interested in, which is again for 24 weeks. Then rural agriculture work experience. And this, the students are sent to the villages. They stay in the villages, live with the farmers, and then try to grasp what are the problems and what the solutions, what they have learned in the classes. And then we are planning in-plant training and industrial attachment for another 10 weeks. And then the student will be asked to submit some projects based on what, and see, as was mentioned earlier by one of our former Vice Chancellor, that when our students take more interest when a project is being assigned to them. And this is what is being thought of as trying to orient these students. The second thing is there are some common courses which have been included in the curricula so that the students are empowered, like environmental studies and disaster management. As you know, in agriculture, a lot of natural calamities occur which affect the production. Then the communication skills and personal development. We have the how to convey anything that is an output from research or technology to the farmer requires a different skill. I can just give one example. I think most of you must have heard about soil health card. Now, soil health card generation requires very sophisticated machinery, but the information, how to convert that information on that card to a farmer so that he is convinced to maybe change his fertilizer dose or his management is not that easy. And the feedback is that most of the farmers don't refer to the soil health card most of the time. So how do we communicate this? And then, of course, India being such a large country of farmers of different categories, 80-85% small marginal, how can we convey the latest information, the latest advisory to him? I think we need to exploit the information communication technology to the fullest possible. And then, of course, a business mode has to be brought in, because, as you all know, that unless, and most of you must have heard the Prime Minister talking about that he wants to double the farmers' income by 2022. And all this is only possible if you have a seamless integration of all possible technologies, because we all know that unless you adopt the modern tools, whether it is for research, whether it's for education, whether it's for extension, probably we will not be able to meet all the demands of the farmers. So there is an absolute need for technology. We need to work, as you all know, in spite of so many developments in agriculture, still the market is affected. If the prediction is a good monsoon, the Sensex rises. One doesn't know what that good monsoon would be. There could be excess rain, there could be still dry spells, but then it has become so important. So we need probably a lot of interaction, and we hope that probably as an outcome of these things, maybe industrial sector can come together and then come up with ideas of sponsoring agri-polytechnics which can actually serve the purpose of these industries. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Singh, for sharing your views. May I now request Dr. Satish Sharma to share his thoughts?
All my co-panelists, delegates, I'm very thankful giving me this opportunity to speak on topic called skill development. The use of technology, which is very, very essential for everybody. But look at that history. If I'm correct, in 1938, the same kind of skill development was started since 6th class. 6th onwards till 10th, then college, then so on. But after Kothari Commission in 1968, this system was dropped and the new system under which we have undergone started. My point is, the policy, our education policy, whether you talk about technical or the basic education, we are in the transition phase. After a long time, maybe 30 or 40 years, again we have started talking about skills. But for whom? Who wants to be a driver? Who wants to be a technician? Who wants to be a plumber? Who wants to be a small, low-level vocational jobs? Everybody wants to become an engineer, a doctor, or an officer. But if you look at our demographic dividend, which would be between 15 years to 29 years, we would be 65% of the total population in 2020. Now, how will we really take care of this population, the Youngistan population? The only solution is, which we talk about, giving skills to everybody and start focusing on a system along with the school system, the vocational system, where we can learn both the things. Along with the degrees, diplomas, or the certificates, we should have some kind of technical skills given to each and everybody since our schooling time. When we talk about the very recent Yojana, which was launched by Prime Minister, Kaushal Vikas Yojana 2016, friends, as far as my knowledge is concerned, I'm involved with this Yojana, part of the Rajasthan state, in the initial phase, very, very correct and apt Yojana for everybody. The motive is, the objective is, the government is going to fund to educate the masses for their training part. All industrialists, the industrialists or the corporates, they are going to tell the needs which they are facing a lot of crunch, and the economic growth part is attached with that we are not able to get the right people for the right jobs. So what is the understanding? The understanding is very clear. The government is going to fund those training part. The trainer is provided the fund for the training, and the corporate needs would be taken care by the trainer based on their needs, the employer needs. The syllabus would be finalized, taking care of the employer needs, and the people would be trained. Then, who will be the auditor? The auditor will be the corporates, who has already signed with the Prime Minister's Council that those candidates, after the qualification of their training, they will be absorbed by those employers. And all employers are big employers like Reliance, Tata, and others in all sectors, across the sectors I'm talking about. Like in a city like Udaipur, where I belong, it's a city of lakes. Purely tourism is the main earning economy of this city. There are 12 or 13 five-star hotels, including one 7-star, the best one in Asia and 5th in the world, called Uday Vilas by Oberoi's. How they will really take care of the skills in a small city, a population of 5 lakhs only. Now, if shortage of skills in a small city is there, from where the people will come? My point is, with this Yojana and the skill part, we have to focus the local population. So, the migration will be less. If the migration will be less, there won't be all pressure on the metros, like Delhi, Calcutta, Bangalore, and other cities. So, those people who are already there, living in those cities, if they will be trained in those sectors or the areas or the disciplines which are very, very part of the economy of that city or that area, it will be very good model. And those corporates, if the certificate is given by the Oberoi's to anybody, Mr. X, at least if whether he or she works with the same corporate or not, the other lower level industries, they will absorb them easily. But these are the government, government yojanas. So, if there would be proper control, the controlling mechanism, and to really implement the objectives, the focus on that, I think we will be able to really educate the masses, and the industries which classify as classes, if they absorb, they can produce the good results, they can keep our growth rate up, and the educating the masses, the dream of our Prime Minister will be solved. The demographic dividend which we really boast will be a dreams come true. Otherwise, it can be a disaster also for India in the coming 5 to 10 years. We are going ahead of China very fast, becoming the fastest economy, but we have to identify the sectors. It's not that wherever we start our education, the technical part or the training, we should pick up the right sectors like the retail, agriculture sector. Lot of scope is there in agriculture sector, but use of technology, as he pointed out rightly. Make the agriculture more of technology based, so that we really save the manpower, save the resources. And the retail sector, the health sector is getting a lot of boom in terms of technology. If we use technology, make our students, arm our students with the technological part, give them right kind of training, I think they can take up the real challenges which are coming in their own way. And at the end, I can say the dream is very nice for our youth. What we have thought, maybe within 5 to 10 years, we will be ahead of all the countries by keeping our demographic dividend intact. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Satish Sharma, for sharing your vision and thoughts and ideas. Yeah. Can we take one or two questions? If you have any questions, probably the panelists can, 2 minutes. Okay. Friends, this is my duty to sum up the proceedings. At the outset, I would like to thank all my eminent panelists. Dr. Srivastav has talked about the livelihood skills required to be developed, particularly in the agriculture sector. Of course, the entire panel is towards agriculture. There are more of agriculture specialists in the panel. Similarly, Mr. Anand, who came from the Adi Shankar Institutes, the efforts they are putting in developing skills and the kind of results they are achieved, and he says 40% of the students got jobs after the skill development programs. It is a really wonderful achievement. Then coming to Professor A.K. Singh, again, he talked about how to build the skill gaps using vocational training programs. He has given a number of examples. Coming to Dr. Satish Sharma again, he talked about the demographic dividend, the advantage India is going to have or is having, and how to build or to visualize our dream of building a developed India and the various schemes brought out by government to build Skill India. So these are some of the points what they have highlighted. And also apart from this, we all know very well after 2 days deliberations, the skill gaps existing in our systems. And probably I think we need to learn from the views, the experiences, the best practices which were shared during the last 2 days. And at least some of them can be implemented in our day-to-day affairs in our institutions. I think the purpose of coming all the way and participating in this conference would really benefited all of us. So with these few remarks, I would like to thank the organizers once again and all my panelists for making their views and sharing their thoughts on this very important thought of bridging the skill gaps. Thank you very much.
Many thanks, Dr. H. Purushottam, for moderating this session and being strict to the timings. So, before we end this session, I would like to invite Mr. Hemant Sethi, President, ELITS Technomedia Private Limited, to present a speaker memento to the moderator, Dr. H. Purushottam, Chairman and Managing Director, National Research Development Corporation, NRDC. Big round of applause. I request Mr. Sethi to present a speaker memento to Dr. R.C. Srivastav, Vice Chancellor, Rajendra Agriculture University. Big round of applause. Mr. K. Anand, Managing Trustee, Adi Shankara Group of Institutions. Huge round of applause. Dr. Satish C. Sharma, Chairman and Director General, Maharaja Group of Colleges, Udaipur. And Professor A.K. Singh, Vice Chancellor, Rajmata Vijayaraje, Sindhya Krishi Vishwavidyalaya. Huge round of applause. I request all the eminent panelists for a group photograph. One more. Big round of applause. Group photograph, please.